Chris Cuomo is off tonight, topping the special hour 360. Enough breaking news to write a week's worth of headlines. Rudy Giuliani subpoenaed for his role in the Ukraine affair. Secretary of State Pompeo revealed belatedly to have been on the phone call with Ukraine's president. Attorney General Barr was tied to wider efforts to discredit the Mueller account of the 2016 election interference. Also, the president calling for the man investigating him, Congress Adam Schiff, suggesting he should be arrested for treason. That and new reporting from CNN's Jamie Gangel and Megan Vasquez on how deeply concerned that people close to the president were and perhaps still are about his conduct on phone calls with foreign leaders. There's new reporting as well on a president who, according to people around him, simply does not grasp the impeachment jeopardy that he is so clearly in. More on all of this now, starting with CNN's Caitlin Collins, who joins us from the White House. First of all, I'm wondering what the mood is at the White House tonight. The president invoked the prospect of a civil war, or raised the specter of it on Twitter.
Yeah, and that tweet, Anderson, kind of gives you an insight into how the president is viewing all of this. He feels embattled. He feels under fire. And that's why you're seeing the president lash out like the way he is on Twitter, quoting people who are saying that it could leave a civil war-like fracture in this nation. But on the other side of things, aides inside the White House are saying, okay, impeachment is likely coming our way. We need to be ready for this. And they don't feel that the president is taking it seriously enough or realizes the implications that are facing him. They want the president to form a defense strategy that they can latch onto, that they can actually use, and that can be something that's aggressive, that actually works. Right now, they don't feel like they found that, and they're frustrated that it's been 6 days almost. And what we're being told by sources, essentially, Anderson, is they feel like they're squandering this opportunity to shape the public message because the president himself is resisting their calls, their suggestions of ways that he can mount that aggressive strategy.
So explain what we learned today about who was on that call on July 25th.
Yeah, this is interesting. We learned that the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, was on that call with President Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky. That's something interesting because you've seen Mike Pompeo come out, say that State Department officials in his mind are acted appropriately in this. But just 8 days ago, he was interviewed on ABC. He was asked about the president pushing the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens. And Anderson, he acted like he was caught off guard by it. He said he hadn't seen the complaint from the whistleblower yet, something he repeated a few days later. But of course, he was on the call. He heard the president push the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens, and obviously that is something that's come under high scrutiny. So he acted like he hadn't heard about it, which of course is just going to further entangle the Secretary of State in this more than he already was.
And the new reporting about how prepared or not prepared the president has been in the past for some calls with world leaders. What are the details on that?
Yeah, now that this call is coming under scrutiny, so are the president's past calls with world leaders. And essentially what you're learning is that despite aides preparing a wealth of materials to get the president ready for these calls, he kind of goes into them unprepared. A lot of that has to do with this freewheeling approach that he's really taken to this. He doesn't feel like he needs to read those materials, and it's led to, during calls with aides in the room, including former Chief of Staff John Kelly, at times having to try to mute the phone to tell the president, hey, you should say this, you shouldn't say that. But of course, we're hearing from people saying this is how the president operates. This is how he does, and he doesn't feel like he needs the advice of those other staffers when he's on those calls with world leaders.
Caitlin Collins of the White House. Appreciate it, Caitlin. Again, a tweet late last night set the stage for some of the fireworks today. The president invoking the Civil War with this tweet, quoting conservative pastor Robert Jeffress. Reading from it now, if the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they will never be, it will cause a civil war-like fracture in this nation from which our country will never heal. Pastor Robert Jeffress at Fox News. That's actually a slight misquote of what Jeffress actually tweeted out. Perspective now from retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, who's both a student of the Civil War and the author of a number of historical novels about it. Colonel Peters, when you see the president tweet about Civil War, retweeting somebody else, misquoting them even, I'm wondering what your reaction is.
One word: sedition. Trump is inciting violence against the legitimate government of the United States and the constitutional order. And Anderson, that is a grave crime. You can argue about the meaning of treason, what constitutes it and what doesn't. Sedition is very clear cut. And you can ask your lawyers, but to me, this is as bald and plain as it could be. But also, I have to say that there's not going to be a civil war. So everybody needs to knock that off. I've been hearing people on the extreme right saying it for years.
Even if we're in a situation where the president of the United States is invoking the notion of a civil war if he is impeached or if he is not reelected, or whatever the parameters he believes this might happen or this might break out. I mean, anybody who, even in, not even going back in U.S. history, in modern times, has seen civil wars in countries around the world up close, there's no responsible leader who would ever kind of raise that, especially in a tweet. It is a horrific thing to witness. It is countrymen turning against countrymen.
Well, indeed. And you have the irony of a draft dodger talking up war. But yes, there have been horrible civil wars. Some are ongoing right now around the world. And they are utterly horrible and very, very cruel. But Trump is very much in the situation of a developing world dictator, in that he's got to stay on the throne to stay out of prison, or in many cases worse. And Trump, he's afraid. He's a frightened man. Because if he loses the election, and it's not a foregone conclusion that he will, but if he does, he's going to face the rest of his life in courtrooms, not at legal bills, perhaps in prison.
The last time that we spoke, you talked about how you feel the founding fathers could never have imagined someone like President Trump. Do you have faith in their institutions to mete out justice, whatever that may be, however that justice is defined?
I hope so. The Republican Party is a terrible disappointment to me. That was always the party of law and order, of the Constitution, of patriotism. And now, with rare exceptions, you see Republicans on Capitol Hill just cowering, afraid of Donald Trump, this bloated old charlatan who never served his country in any capacity. And all these Republican patriots are running to make excuses for him, cringing. And yeah, I know my views are strong on this, but Anderson, I love this country. I don't love it like Donald Trump, just for what I can get. I love this country. It's as good as life gets on this earth. And we are an ungrateful people. And Donald Trump is an embarrassment that cannot be measured.
With this president, I mean, it's often been said that everything is transactional with him. Relationships are transactional. Clearly, foreign policy is, and he seems to extend what he did in real estate into the Oval Office. Ukraine, it's not a country that is an ally to the United States battling an aggressor to the United States, Russia, and in need of aid. It's a young leader who may be able to bend to the will and, come up with dirt on the Bidens or on Clinton or whoever.
Yeah, and you're certainly right. Trump is all about Trump, is all about Trump. And I really feel sorry for the people who voted for him, who convinced themselves that this man is a patriot. But I also have to say that in defense of Trump's supporters, they were abandoned by both political parties. As the Republican Party became the party of high finance, the Democrats became the party of high society. And where I come from, in the coal regions of Pennsylvania, people went ignored, utterly ignored. And Trump, I'm sure he's never read a page of Hegel, the German philosopher, but he instinctively gets the gist of Hegel and the idea of recognition. All human beings want recognition. And what Trump did was give recognition to the people, the electorate, that had been ignored by both parties. And I feel sorry for the people in there. I know a lot of Trump voters who even now can't give up. They can't admit they were wrong because their pride's caught up in it. So we're in for an interesting election year.
Yeah, Colonel Ralph Peters, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,